Welcome to Leadershipedelics Season 2. My name is Sebastien. Join me every week to explore the intersection between leadership, psychedelics, and deep spiritual experiences. We'll learn from people's journeys, from the hardships they've had, and from the insights they've gained, and how they use those insights to manifest a better future for their community, for themselves, and for the world around them. If you like the show, subscribe to it. And if you know anyone who would be a great guest for the show, send them my way and I'll take it from there. This week, we meet with Roel by Devata, the founder of Cosmic Truffles, a company focused on microdosing, natural psilocybin, community, and education building. We discuss Roel's journey from his early interest in spirituality, the internal challenges from working as a tattoo artist, his constant pain from lumbar hernia, and how microdosing helped him change his relationship to that pain. Roel shares his perspective on psychedelics, science, and the importance to know you are loved and valued. This was a beautiful conversation with a great flow. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi, Roel, and welcome to Leadershipedelics.
Thanks.
You're welcome. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. First, I want to make sure I give you an opportunity to pronounce your full name, because I got the first name, but I'm not even going to try the last name because I'm going to butcher it. So I want to give you that opportunity.
Yeah. I got a little bit of a strange last name. But my first name in Holland, you pronounce it like Roel, but Raoul is just fine. I find people from other countries find it quite difficult to pronounce it, so Raoul will just do fine.
Great. What about your last name? I'm very curious.
By Devata.
By Devata.
Yeah,
oh.
Sounds about right.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So where are you calling us from today?
I'm from the Netherlands. I'm from a small city close to Den Bosch, which is called, also a really funny name, Sint Michielsgestel.
I'm not even going to try.
Yeah. There's this thing about Holland and funny names and difficult names.
No, that's great. So, it's awesome. We connected before and we chatted a little bit. And one of the things that I was looking at some answers you gave me in preparation for the show. And one of the things that stood out is at a really early age, you were really interested in religion.
True.
And I'm curious if you could build a little bit on that and talk about what drew you to religion at such an early age.
Yeah, good question. Well, I was raised in a Christian family, and already from a really, really early age, I started thinking about it, and it just didn't resonate with me. And but it did brought up some questions. Then what does resonate with me? And I already had that at a very young age. I think I was maybe 13, 14 that I already started thinking about these things. Wow. And then I got some books from a friend of mine about Hinduism and about Buddhism. And these things, they really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Way more than Christianity did to me. So that's how I was introduced to different kinds of religion and different kinds of thoughts. And yeah.
That's wonderful. Are there things that stood out that you still remember then when you kind of got introduced to those texts and changed your life or how you looked at life?
Well, that's a good one. I think things like harmony and oneness in terms of that kind really struck me, and I really felt this is something I feel too, and these kind of things were really important, and I found them in these texts, which I didn't find in the way I was brought up. So
yeah, I can relate to that. I'm I love reading Buddhism magazines or texts written by Buddhist teachers. There's a very close connection with what they're talking about and what you're feeling with psychedelic experiences or
exactly.
Higher states, which kind of brings us to psychedelics. So you got a different perspective from religion, and it sounds like soon after you were exposed to psychedelics.
Yeah, that was very early too. I think I was about 15 or 16 years old when I had my first psychedelic experience, and I wasn't prepared for that at all, to be honest. But we went down the rabbit hole, me and two friends, and they already had done it before, so I was kind of knowing what to expect, but actually totally not. I mean, it's just so overpowering, and we took quite a high dose. And
was that truffles or mushrooms?
Truffles, yeah, okay. Psilocybin truffles.
Okay.
And from that moment on, I was really, really interested in these kind of things.
Wow.
It opened a completely different new world to me, and it like you said, it made the connection with the things I was reading about these terms like oneness and unity and consciousness and all of these things.
Is that a frequent thing in Netherlands to have truffles at 15? Is that a rite of passage, or is it something you stumbled upon? Or
I certainly hope not.
I'm curious because I'm like, wow, that's I know the truffles are legal there, and I'm just curious how that event happened, and your life before and after, when you stepped out of that event, the next day, how was that?
Yeah, that was strange. That was just I was completely shocked because the experience was really, really intense, and to put it in short, it felt a bit like a rebirth. It was such a strong experience, and I had a couple of times where I did lose my the thing they call ego dissolution.
Mm-hmm.
I had this kind of experience a couple of times during this trip, and it was so powerfully shocking that I don't know. The next day it was just like I was reborn. At least I felt like that. I was looking at the world like it was completely new.
How did you approach that? You were 15, reborn, looking at the world in a new light. How did you interact with the world, with your parents and all that as a result, your family? How did you take the steps forward?
Yeah, that was quite difficult actually, because we were kind of the only ones, at least in our circle, experiencing these things. And actually, I didn't talk that much about it to my parents and to my family, and so it was kind of difficult actually. To be completely honest, it also put me through quite a struggle afterwards, because I was seeing the world in a completely new way, and I didn't find a connection with the people around me on that subject.
Yeah.
So that was quite difficult, to be honest.
What are some of the more difficult things you had to reconcile or put up with after that experience?
Well, actually it was a reinforcement of something that I was already experiencing with how I looked upon the world, like religious wise. And that gap actually became larger after that experience, because I didn't know how to even try to explain it to my parents. I did mention it a couple of times, hey, I did truffles, but I didn't even know where to start. How to explain a really intense experience. It can be challenging, especially when when you're so opposite in your ways of thinking.
Yeah. I'm assuming your parents hadn't done truffle or weren't familiar with that level of experience.
No. I think the only thing they were exposed to was the normal thing, cigarettes and alcohol.
Very different.
Yeah, very, very different. I don't think they even didn't smoke cannabis as well. So I'm not completely sure about this, but
yeah. And one concern that sometimes parents have, and I know my mom has that sometimes, is psychedelics can be addictive, or that's the concern, or that's the message they've been fed. And after that first experience, were you like addicted to psychedelics and
No.
wanting to go back to it right away?
No. I was kind of scared, actually. It was so shocking, and you can imagine being of that age, going through such an experience. It was really, really shocking, and I didn't think for a second about going back. I was I'm happy I survived it. That's how I felt afterwards, actually.
Yeah. Did you stay in touch with the friends you did the experience with, and like how did they fare through it, and like did you guys support each other? Or?
Yeah, we definitely did. We came together a lot. I think like almost every night we came together, and we were always kind of talking about these kind of topics about religion and how do you see the world, and what do you want for it, and we were really into these kind of things. And so we did support each other, and we by that our relationship got even better and even more
stronger.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's nice. You had your own integration circle in a way. In place. That's really good. I mean, this is something that keeps coming up in a lot of discussions, is that the need for that community after such an experience, and supporting each other, because you're now seeing things very differently, and it's helpful to have others who've gone through that as well.
Most definitely.
You also mentioned when we talked earlier that this led you to meditation and to kind of other practices. Can you talk a little bit more about these practices that it led you to after that experience?
Yeah, actually meditation was something I was already interested in before the psychedelic experience. But after the psychedelic experience, it really enhanced that, and I got in. All of a sudden, this became really important. But meditation was always something I really enjoyed already before the psychedelic experience. I think we even had meditation sessions together.
That's awesome.
Yeah, me and my friend already at that age, and
wow.
We were just really interested in these kind of things. And
how did you approach it? Like, what type of meditation were you doing, and how did that change after your psychedelic experience? Like, how did you approach it? Maybe slightly different after that.
Yeah, at first I think it was really basic. It was really about the breathing, so about connecting with the breath and focusing on the breath, and when a thought comes up, you observe it and you let it go again. And that has always been the main drive of my meditation practice. Actually, it's just the breath. Focus on it. Put a little music on the background, and meditation has always, for me at least, always been about observing the breath and observing thought patterns coming up and
that's
going.
Beautiful. It's so. I mean, I know the breath is vital. I mean, it's such a universal tool. Did you, when you had that first experience, did you actually pull in from your meditation practice through the experience to kind of help you get through that experience? Yeah,
I think so. I didn't really. I don't think we meditated a lot more, but I kept going with that, and it did really help me, because sometimes I was really thinking about it a lot, and I couldn't figure some things out as well. And with meditation, I could put these things at ease and just not think about them, and that's sometimes really liberating as well, because in that way they can, some of the memories of the experience can integrate in another way. It's hard to explain exactly how, but some things you just can't put into words, and that was the same with that experience. I
mean, it allows you to feel things that they don't even have words for.
Yeah. I wish they would find words for these kinds of things, but
it reminds me of like the Sanskrit language, and sometimes things like namaste means so much more than we think it means, and some of those words have like a whole story attached to them. And it's nice to see words that are so encompassing of so much. Like I feel like a lot of the words we use here in English, a lot of times they actually box things in, and in a way, as soon as you tie a word to it, you're kind of limiting the breadth of what that thing is. So it's interesting. And I mean, and you weren't even thinking English as you were going through this. So it sounds like you have the same problem in your native language. Like sometimes words are limiting, and they don't really translate everything.
Yeah, they are. And it's funny that you mentioned this, because a lot of the ancient languages have this kind of way of speaking, writing. Some words can comprehend complete sentences and complete stories. I think you still find that in Chinese and in Eastern languages, and it's a totally different approach than how we use and implement our language. Yeah,
and it's like good luck translating them. I remember going through a yoga teacher training, and of course we want a quick translation. We want one word for one word, and it's like the teacher was like, well, namaste really means this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, can you just give me one word for it? It's funny. So let's fast forward. So you got through your teens, you had this important experience. You had meditation, you had the tools of learning from different religions, and then you go and what I say, the real world, but the real working world. How did that transition happen as you had this foundation and those really important experiences, and then you were now working as part of society? How did that work out?
Yeah, well, that actually got really strange for me, especially when I look back onto it. Because I got kind of lost there. I started focusing on a job, on working in general, and started thinking about how do I want to make money and make a living. And along the years, I just slowly lost my interest during this focus on making a living. I started tattooing, and all of my attention was put into it, actually, and slowly but surely I lost my interest for the things I valued. I didn't read or thought about psychedelics that much anymore. I was just so focused on making art, which I really enjoyed, by the way. It was great, but I slowly lost these kinds of kind of interests. And after a couple of years, 4, 5, 6 years of tattooing, I just almost completely forgotten about it. How strange it may sound.
Oh, it's not. It doesn't sound strange. I went through the same thing. And I've heard that story many times. It's like you have this richness of experiences when you're young, and all those ideas, all that creativity, and then I've seen a lot of people that get siloed in a job. That happened to me. It was engineering, and then you forget that child, you forget those desires you had, that imagination, and I think it comes to a head eventually, because you realize, wow, there's this part of me that I haven't fed, like it's starving, and it needs to come out. At least that's my experience, and that's what I've seen in others. But it sounds like you were going through something similar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because indeed a lot of people do experience this in some sort of way, and I think there are also a lot of people who never come back from that. I was just thinking about a couple of people I used to know, and they're they're still really focused on making a living, doing their jobs, and this is kind of the thing where a lot of people go through in the early 20s and mid 20s, and yeah.
Do you still stay in touch with those two other friends you were with in that first psychedelic experience?
One totally not. He went to the, I think it was the Commandos.
Okay.
Or the Marines, so he's doing that. I actually never speak to him. Just got lost along the way. But the other friend I still talk to once in a while. He's also the creator of our webpage. So that's
okay.
We're still in touch.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I was curious how his journey went. And I mean, it'd be great to have him on the show later to get his perspective.
Yeah.
If he's open to that. I always like to get different perspective on people's journeys. And so you also mentioned when we talked that eventually something brought all this to a head. And your lumbar hernia. Can you talk a little bit more about this and how that really brought it all into perspective?
Yeah, that was talking about shocking experiences. That was really shocking. But on the other hand, it was needed as well. How strange that may sound. 2.5 years it's been now. I was working a lot, and you can imagine being a tattooer, you're not always sitting in the best position, so I always sit bended over and always bit in a weird way. And at the same time, I didn't pay a lot of attention to my food, so I got a little bit heavier as well, and I didn't sport that much anymore. That was also something I really liked doing when I was in my early 20s, late teens. My physical condition just wasn't the best anymore, and I remember that I found it was time to do something about it. So I started working out, and I just went totally crazy on that, and just someday I just lifted something up the wrong way, and it immediately went wrong. That was the start of something that wasn't really funny. It was really tough. Over the period of 2.5 years, I had on and off periods where I was like 3 weeks couldn't do anything, couldn't walk, to being able to work and do something. But over the course of 2.5 years, it was just quite heavy to bear, because I was constantly feeling my body. I was actually constantly in pain, and especially during these periods where it was just really worse. It would just come up all of a sudden and go away. I was really in pain, and it was quite heavy to bear, to be honest.
So you mentioned at some point in that journey, the psychedelics came back in the picture. And you held back this part of the story when we chatted. So I'd love to know what happened then. Like, how did you encounter the psychedelics again, and when you were in that much pain and struggle?
Well, I was at this point where I was really rethinking about a lot of things. I couldn't work on a regular basis anymore, so I was a lot at home, lying down. There were periods I could just lay on my side on the floor downstairs. I couldn't even lay in my bed. So you could imagine.
Those are terrible pain. I mean, I've been through some pains like that. Those are pains where you want to scream, right?
Oh,
it's extremely painful, and you can't move, and you're afraid to move sometimes because of the pain that is right there behind that move you're afraid to do, right?
Exactly. And the worst thing about it is you cannot escape. You cannot have a break. I tried different things, and it just went on and on and on. Luckily, these periods weren't all the time. The heaviest moment were just the peak moments They were just like 5, 6, 7 days, and then it would ease a little bit, and I started to be better again. But then always after a month, 2 months sometimes, it would come back. And yeah, some of this periods were really, really bad, and they kind of brought me back to, what am I doing? And what went wrong? What is happening? And I really started thinking about myself and about my situation. And this actually kind of brought me back by meditation and self-care and all of these things, which I really realized at that point I did have forgotten. And somehow how I also saw a connection between these two things. It's difficult to explain why, but
no, I mean, I can see it. I mean, it just felt that maybe you strayed away from the path that you like originally maybe were set on.
Exactly.
And maybe you strayed so far away from the path that it had a physical negative impact on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you get back? How do you get back on that?
Yeah, exactly. I was coming back at things like meditation, so I started to care about these things. I started to take my interests in spirituality again, and started reading again and meditating. And then I came across, I can't remember exactly what, but I think it was an article about microdosing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, well, I should try that. And so I started microdosing. I don't know if you know what microdosing is, but
I do, but I don't know if everybody who's listening knows. So if you can go into a little bit of details there, I think it would help.
Of course. Well, microdosing is taking a small, tiny amount of a psychedelic substance. It's supposed to be sub-perceptual, so when you take it, you're not out of this world. That's how it's supposed to be. Yeah. But in the background, it does things to you, and I must say, at the end of a microdose day, you can certainly feel that, and it kind of goes like, "Wow, that was a good day," and it just helps you a little bit, gives you this little extra edge to be aware of yourself, about your patterns, and gives you this hug or eagle view. I found that was really helpful.
You described it really well. It's funny, I just listened to James Fadiman on Psychedelics Today talk about that. And he actually he's talked about microdosing a lot, and that was in his book, the Psychedelics Explorer's Guide, that came out in 2011, that kind of re-energized the movement around microdosing. And he said exactly the same thing you said. It's like at the end of the day, you reflect and you're like, oh, wow, this was a good day. And the sub-perceptive or dosage is also really important. And there's so many studies to be done around microdosing, and there's also a lot of debate about how much is placebo versus actual chemical effect. In my mind was like, well, I don't care which one it is. Exactly. Because that's if the placebo is about the body healing itself and believing it can heal itself and heal itself, then awesome. So I'll let people debate that. So you were like, how were you microdosing? Like what were you like? Were you doing like 3 days on, 2 days off, or like what did you have? I'm curious about the schedule you followed and the substance you used as well.
Well, like you said, there are different methods to do it, and in the meantime, I tried a lot of them. But it started out with the so-called Fadiman protocol, and it's designed by James Fadiman, where you were just talking about. And it's the protocol where you take a microdose and then take 2 days off. So you take a dose on day 1, day 2 nothing, day 3 nothing. And his theory behind it is on the second day, the psilocybin apparently is still active in the body. So the third day is there to be sure that you have a day that there's no active substance in your body. So you can really integrate the experience, like what it did for you, or what it meant for you.
And so as you started microdosing, what impact did it have on kind of your meditation practice, your body, your lumbar hernia? Like, how did that help you move forward from kind of that dark place you were in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's well, when I started, I was still really, really in pain. I was in a bad place at that moment. But surely and slowly, it just got better, and not my lumbar, my lumbar problem, my pain, but the way I was dealing with it. At first, I felt really like a victim. I felt sorry for myself, and I was, really. I wouldn't say depressed, because I wasn't depressed, but it took a toll, as you can imagine. And microdosing really helped me to deal with that situation and with that pain a lot better. To put it in short, I could see the opportunity to get out of it and to get something out of it and to learn from it. So instead of just letting it all happen to me, I was all of a sudden like, hey, let's do something with it. Let's build upon this. And that's actually something microdosing really helped me with.
And so you were building on that. Were you still a tattoo artist at the time, or like had you transitioned to what you're doing now, or are you still a tattoo artist now? You're not. No. So how did that transition happen? Was it after that, or can you expand on that?
Yeah, of course. I had these on and off periods where I was getting better, and then I felt like, I can do something, and I had all my appointments. I was quite busy at a certain point, and it went like that. I was in pain for a couple of weeks at home, and then I would go back to work, and then I would fall back again in pain again, and this would go on and off all the time for, I think, 1.5 years, something like that. And in the end, I just got so tired of it. Like, I have to do something. That's really how I felt about it. I cannot go on like this, because otherwise it will never go away. So I had to make some abrupt decisions, and that's when I decided to quit tattooing. And I think this was something that was supposed to be happening at some point in my life, because don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed being a tattoo artist and doing all these things, but there was also a part which I didn't like about it, and all along the years I just neglected that part, because it was easy going. I made my money, and I didn't think about it too much. But there was a part about tattooing which I didn't like, and that was the part where I some days could create whatever I wanted to create, and it was really nice. And but there were a lot of times where people asked things of me, and well, I agree on these things, and no problem, of course, but they weren't close to my heart, you know.
I got it right away. I got it right away when, you know, you were telling your stories, and I can relate to that because I did some consulting. It was creative consulting to create websites, and when you're creating, especially with tattoos, there's something very powerful about tattoos and spiritual, and when it's close to your heart and has meaning, I can see how for a person like who's as connected as you are, it's great. It's very rewarding. You've helped that person, empowered that person, or helped them show a side of themselves that's beautiful. But then there's other times where you have people who come in maybe with some dark energy or other things, and they ask you to basically do something to their body and put something on their body that that might be more challenging. And I was just going to ask you about that, and you went right to it. I was like, okay, I can see.
Yeah, exactly. You got it right away. It's just there's something really beautiful about tattooing, and that's the part where it's empowering, just as you said. But I think 80% of the time, 80% of the time, it's just, I don't know. It's to my opinion, it's not for the good reason, and I think I did help a lot of people with a kind of a bigger ego. So and that after a while, it just didn't resonate with me anymore, and I did still like the art part and the part where I was creating things for people in a positive way, but that other part was really bothering me eventually.
So you decided to stop that, and what's amazing is you were able to reach out and change your situation. What steps did you take at that point? Like, because a lot of what we're talking about on this show is also leadership and how people manifest that future they want to build. Like, how did you go from I'm done being a tattoo artist to now I want to build a different future? Like, what was that thought process for you?
Well, how strange it may sound, it was really easy for me to do that at some point, because I was just so tired of these setbacks, and actually the last time it went really, really bad. There's also a side story to that, which really turned the switch for me, which I was still tattooing and didn't think about something else, but I was thinking about going traveling. So me and my partner, we decided to buy an old bus and transform it into a camper van. And I figured I can work all over Europe and we could travel and work at the same time. So we built it on that dream. And right the day before we left, it just went completely south again with my back. And that was the moment that I thought, I have to change everything I'm doing, and that was the point that I really thought, well, maybe it's time to stop with tattooing and do something else. And for a couple of weeks I couldn't think of something else because I was in so much pain. But I already decided that I had to quit with the tattoo job, and so I did. And then this new interest grew, where I was thinking about, what do I want to do now? What am I going to do? And the psychedelics came in.
So at that point, were you just experiencing psychedelics through microdoses, or had you done more higher doses to help you gain some insights, or what was your relationship with psychedelics at that point?
Well, I did a couple of microdosing cycles. I really actively worked with them, and I also discovered something which was really beneficial to me, and that was not microdosing, but I call it a macrodosing. So that's taking a little bit more than a microdose, and I found that to be really beneficial as well. So once every 3 weeks I would take such a macro dose, and I would intentionally think about some aspect of myself and actively work with that. And I found that to be really beneficial. And I took a couple of high doses of psilocybin as well during that time, which were also really profound.
Yeah. Was that done, like, were you doing these on your own or in the context of okay.
Yeah.
Great. But you had some experience as well. Did you add any other practices on top of that? Like, I don't know, yoga, exercise, meditation, because you were still in pain, and I'm curious what you layered on top of the psychedelic experiences.
Well, there are a lot of aspects that come into play when you're getting back to spirituality and psychedelics. I also started to really dive into my eating habits again. I started to eat clean and healthier, and I also started to move bit by bit, which was really hard at the beginning, because I couldn't even do a normal stretching routine. But slowly and surely I got better and better and better, and I kept with it every day. And I also got introduced to something I still do until this very day, and that is cold exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really beneficial to me as well. And I do, and I still meditate and do some breath work every now and then. Yeah.
No, it's I got introduced to that when I met Wim Hof, and
you met Wim Hof.
Yeah, it
cool.
was. He was on vacation with his family in Peru, and we ended up spending a week with them and some friends, and it was. He's a wonderful person, and he's very knowledgeable and very kind, and told me a lot about what he tells everyone about the benefits of cold exposure, cold bath, breath work. He also does yoga, and so it was pretty amazing to meet him. And I knew nothing about him before that, and now this keeps coming up in a lot of the discussions I have is cold bath, cold exposure, and ever since I met him, I end all my showers in cold showers, and it's really helped. It not only wakes me up, but I think it helps my body as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice. Did you meet him spontaneously?
Yeah. It's it was basically his wife was going to a retreat I was going to as well with my wife, and he accompanied his wife on the retreat with his family, even though he didn't participate in the ayahuasca ceremonies, because he says he can produce his own DMT through his own work. So for him, he didn't need to participate in those ceremonies. But it was a surprise. It was basically like, oh, there's this guy Wim Hof that's going to be there, and I was like, oh, okay. I don't know anything about this guy, but and then we met him, and he's a character. He's an amazing character.
Yes.
And he's somewhere in Europe. I don't know. I don't keep track of where he's at. But he runs regular retreats and around his breath work, and
spreading the message.
Spreading the message, a beautiful message. He also does a lot of science around the work he's doing, working with universities. But anyway.
That's also what I really like about this guy, is that he's not only doing it himself, like a lot of reactions he got at the early stages of his that he was known was you are a freak of nature, but later on he showed like, well, everybody can do this, and that's what he did with science. It was really interesting.
Oh yeah, and he continues. I remember when we met with him in 2019, so it was before the pandemic, and he was sharing with us some of the research he was doing around with some universities, and it was like all science based, and it's like that message needs to be spread around. And if people who are listening don't know about Wim Hof, they should check him out as well, because a lot of people have benefited from his work. Okay, so let's go back to your journey. You're taking better care of your body. You've had a few more psychedelic experiences. You're doing micro and macro, but you still haven't talked about like how you got to where you are today. So how did that transition happen? Because now you're full in the psychedelic space, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
well, but I was at this point where I really thought like, well, I have all the time in the world. What shall I do? And that was where I thought, if there's one thing I really like and where I'm really passionate about, then it is psychedelics. And then the idea arose to play a part in this. And yeah, this is where I started building on the platform where I'm building on. We're working on it since last autumn, something like that.
Yeah.
And I say we, but I mean I. It's mostly I doing the work. And yeah, we actually kind of started like a web shop, and this is the main focal point. And but I'm trying to build it out and to make this as a platform to provide education and tools to implement it in a way that benefits personal growth and spirituality and all the things that help me with. And I think this is really important, because what I find is that a lot of these the psilocybin truffles, they are quite accessible in Holland, but a lot of these platforms, they in my opinion, they lack in providing education. There is education. There's always some of these sales platforms. Mm-hmm. They have some text and they show you some things. But to my opinion, most platforms do lack certain tools to actively work with them. And what also is lacking is that I think a lot of people come at a point where they feel like, well, I just don't know what I'm doing. And I think for that group of people, it's really important to have some kind of, how do you say that? Some kind of a place where they can acquire guidance and help. Yeah. This is what we did with the platform, where we provide the access to various professionals working with these medicines. And I think this is really important in this space, that there is a place where people can go to and feel safe and make the best out of it.
No, and that's good, because those medicines are quite powerful, and they can create a lot of good. But if you go in there without knowing what you're doing, without the right support, or without, all by yourself, without, the friends you had when you were 15 that were there to meet with you afterward, you're kind of playing with fire a little bit.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of respect when approaching this, at least in my mind. And so the work you're doing and other people are doing with education, I feel is really important. It's a little bit different from cannabis. I think with cannabis, you can get away with selling it without the education. I was like, you probably would benefit from education with cannabis as well, because there's so much variety and so much breadth and so much more than we know, and even ways to approach it in ceremonial ways. But I feel the risks aren't maybe as big as work with psychedelics, though I'm sure there's people out there that will correct me.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good point you're touching on, because actually the idea came from my personal situation, where I afterwards realized that, wow, I'm very, very lucky that I have a group of people where I can talk to, my friends in this case. And I was also very lucky that I already got introduced to terms like consciousness and awareness and awareness expansion. And I did know already a little bit about these kind of places and mental realms. But I can imagine if you're not and you're going into it like recreationally, for some it might be wonderful and that's great. But I think there are a lot of people going into it actually getting on damage, because it can be quite, especially with high dosages, it can be quite traumatic if you don't know what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people, and especially in Holland, where it's really easy access to these kinds of things, that point is missing a little bit. I think a lot of people don't know that there's great depth to these things, and I think there's a big misconception that they're drugs for recreational use, because in fact they can be for some people, and that's great. But in my mind, they're not. And that's where I want to touch upon with the platform.
Yeah, I that's also how I feel about it. Yeah, there's a lot of people using it for recreation, going to concerts or raves or other events, and and there's a place for recreation, there's a place for entertainment. Yes. There's but at the same time, like, you're opening a doorway in your mind. Like, once that doorway is open, what are you gonna let in and out of that doorway? And you have to be very, very careful in what happens once you open that door. And it's not to scare people, but it's more to call to being responsible, of like being mindful about how you approach that. So, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like they have this really powerful. They can be a really powerful tool to a lot of people, but only used in the right circumstances. And I think that's something that people need to think about beforehand. And it's great that people use it for fun, and it can be fun. I had fun trips as well, but to me, if I talk about psychedelics, I immediately link this to spirituality and things of that importance. And I think also when you go back into history, you find countless records and indications that there were for nothing else than for a sacred and spiritual use. And if there's one thing going forward with this, I think that is the way, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So we're almost at time now, and I want to touch on a few other things around leadership. Like, if you look over all the past and all your psychedelic experience, meditation experience around religion, like, what is like the one biggest insight you could take out of that you would want leaders all around the world to kind of pay attention to and say, oh wow, we need to maybe do a little bit more of this? And you said something beautiful in the past, but I'm always curious to see what how different people's answer is on the show when we record versus what you've said in the past, and then I'll bring that up if you forgot.
All right. I have to think about this. Well, I think if there's one thing I hope people get away from this, is that it's really important to be authentic and to understand that whatever you bring to the table is valuable. Because I also felt like that when sometimes the scientific part of these of the psychedelic space can be quite intimidating. Like it can be quite elite. Sometimes it already has these forms, and it can be quite intimidating. But when I really think about it, and there's so much more to them than the scientific approach. There's this whole spiritual and cultural historic aspect, which I'm very well aware of. And when I think about leadership, it's like, for me, it's really important to express the things that are important to you as an individual. And I think if you're really passionate about something, you can go and take that with you and express that as something authentic and valuable.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Well, the other thing you said in the past was everyone is a leader, and we should all encourage one another. And I thought it was beautiful because it was such a nice way to view the world, and also it implies a support of each other, which a lot of time is missing in order to really bring about that leadership that we all need.
Exactly. Yeah, it kind of has a similarity with what I just said. It's just so important to for every individual to understand that they matter. That if there's something they're passionate about, And if there's something they really believe in, they can bring it to the table and they can speak up. They don't have to hide, or they don't have to think they're not enough, or whatever may come up. Sometimes I've experienced these things myself. So I think that's really important for every individual to understand that they matter and that they can come out with it and express themselves.
And knowing that you're loved is another thing that you mentioned. That's really, really important. And I think that as leaders, reminding people that they're loved and letting them know is also an important duty of a leader. And I really like what you said on the scientific aspect. I always have discussions with friends of mine who are like, well, you're talking about all those things from your perspective of your experiences and experiences of people you've met and all that. But, you have to wait for the science to catch up to really prove all this. And, I ask myself that question all the time. And I had a ceremony recently where I was like, sure, I believe in science. I mean, I was an engineer. I studied engineering. I think science is great. It's there's plenty of room for science, but the process we have to use to demonstrate those things that we've already felt is going to be a very lengthy process. It's going to take a lot. And some of those things are so complicated, and they have to do with so much more than just treating a specific trauma or specific conditions, that it is going to take a while for science to catch up. And I think it's okay, but at the same time, saying that it's only real if science can prove it, which sometimes I feel some people believe that way, is also not fair, right? Because there are things you and I and other people who've done psychedelics have experienced. And last time I did a ceremony, I was like, well, it's going to take a while for science to catch up to that one.
I can totally relate.
So, I'm glad you brought this part up. Where can people find your site, your business? I'll put that in the show notes. And where can they connect with you and learn more about you?
Well, most active that I am is on Instagram. I post regularly about topics concerning spirituality and psychedelics. Of course, there's always that link. And my website. I try to post an article at least every month, and I'm trying to increase it as we go forward. So I would say, for content-wise, just have a peek on the website every now and then, and follow me on Instagram. I think Instagram is the page where I'm active the most.
Great. So. Is there any other questions you wish I had asked, or any questions you have for me before we wrap it up?
I would just really like to compliment you on the way you really put your attention on the individual part of it. I think that's really unique. And I also wanted to ask you, why is that so important to you rather than focusing on the business side of things?
That's a great question. I love people's journeys. I don't know why. I think it's fascinating to see, everybody's journey is unique. All the hardships we go through make us who we are. And I feel like sometimes there's a perception in our society that we see somebody, later in their age, and we can go straight there. And, even like one day I had a younger guy ask me, is like, oh, I wish I could be where you're at, like right now. And I'm like, it takes hardship, it takes pain, it takes time, it takes learning. And there's so much we can learn from each other's journey. I also feel in our society, we tend to put people in boxes that help us simplify who they are. And boil it down to a stereotype. And if we actually spend the time listening to their journey, we'd realize how much amazing more amazing, like we as humans are. Like in some ceremonies, those were kind of the visions I was given. So I do want to tell those journeys. I want to show those colors. And you know, I believe it helps us build a better future. So that's, you know, the business is, everybody talks about their business and what they're doing right now and on all the other podcasts. And so there's plenty of that already happening. And I'm more interested in that. I'm learning. Like, you know, today I learned from you. And I learned from every guest. So there's also a selfish aspect because I want to grow.
Very important.
So yeah, thank you. Yeah. That's a great question.
Yeah, great answer as well. I think this counts for psychedelics in general as well. I think as we come back to the scientific approach, scientific can have the tendency to box certain things in certain aspects of the psychedelic experience. But to me, what the past shows and the nature of the experience itself shows, it's that there's much more mysticism and spirituality to it than actually acknowledged by this scientific methods. And I think this aspect is at least, it has been for thousands and thousands of years to a lot of people. It has been the most important aspect to it. Yeah. So I totally agree on the personal and the spiritual and the journey part of it. And I think this counts for the individual experience, but it also counts for psychedelics in general.
Yeah. Great. Well, that's a beautiful place to end it. Thank you, Roel. And hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I love, by the way, your background. It's very well chosen. So it's like you're perfectly centered in the middle of it. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. It was nice talking to you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Leadershipedelics. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you only listen to it, we also have a YouTube channel that allows you to connect more deeply with the guests by seeing some of the visual cues that happen when we talk that don't necessarily come across when you just listen to somebody. And if you like the show and haven't subscribed to it yet, subscribe to it. If you haven't given a review yet, I'll be so humble and grateful if you give a review. It also helps get the word out there and find more listeners and change the world one person at a time. And finally, if you know of any guests that could be a good fit for the show, send them my way and I'll take it from there. On that note, have a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you again next week.